You said it in the meeting, clearly, with enough detail that the people around you understood it. And then, 10 minutes later, someone else said it again, slightly reworded, repositioned as their own. And the room responded like it was the first time they heard it. Your manager nodded. Someone wrote it down. The person who repeated it got the credit. And you sat there knowing exactly what happened, but having no clean way to prove it or address it without sounding defensive or paranoid. This isn't a one-time occurrence for most people. It happens in a pattern. The same meetings, the same ideas, the same outcome. And the explanation most people reach for, that the other person is manipulative, that the culture is toxic, that the system is rigged, is sometimes true, but almost always incomplete. Because idea theft in meetings is rarely just one thing. It's a system of overlapping dynamics, and most of them run whether anyone intends them to or not. The person repeating your idea often doesn't know they're doing it. The room crediting them usually isn't conspiring against you, but the outcome is the same regardless of intent. Here are 12 reasons it keeps happening, and what to do about each one. Reason 1. You speak too early in a meeting. When you offer an idea at the very beginning of a meeting, before the room has found its rhythm, before the key voices have established themselves, before anyone knows who to listen to, your idea lands in a vacuum. The room hasn't calibrated yet. Nobody has a reason to attribute anything to you specifically. Your idea enters as raw material, available for anyone to pick up later and reintroduce from a position of more established authority, once the room is actually paying attention. Fix. Hold your strongest ideas for mid-meeting, after you've spoken at least once on a lower stakes point and after the room's hierarchy has surfaced. Position in the conversation matters as much as quality of the idea. Reason 2. You don't attach your name to the idea when you deliver it. What if we tried X? Is a fundamentally different sentence from, I want to propose X, and here's my thinking. The first is an anonymous offering. The second is a named contribution. When you present an idea without claiming it, without framing it as a recommendation, your read, your analysis, you release it into shared space. And shared space has no reliable memory of origin. The meeting will absorb it and redistribute it without anyone intending to erase you. Fix. Own your ideas verbally when you introduce them. My recommendation here is, what I'd suggest based on what I've seen is, small linguistic adjustments that attach your name to the contribution before anyone else can detach it. Reason 3. You allow too much time between your idea and your follow-through. In the gap between when you say something and when someone else repeats it, meeting memory resets. If no one responds immediately, if the conversation moves forward, if 20 seconds pass without acknowledgement, the idea sits in the room unanchored. It becomes available. The next person to pick it up gets to anchor it. And once an idea gets anchored to someone else's voice, the room moves on with that version of history. Fix. Don't let the gap sit. After introducing an idea, follow it immediately with your reasoning. The reason this works is, or what this solves specifically is, this forces the room to stay with your framing before the gap opens and someone else fills it. Reason 4. You frame your ideas as questions instead of recommendations. Have we considered doing X? Invites the room to think alongside you, which means the thinking gets distributed and the conclusion gets credited to whoever voices it. We should do X because Y positions you as the person who already did the thinking. Questions are prompts. Recommendations are positions. The room doesn't credit the person who asked the question. It credits the person who answered it. And if you ask the question, someone else will answer it. And the answer is what gets remembered. Fix. Convert your hypotheses to positions before the meeting begins. Arrive with a point of view, not a prompt. Know what you think before you walk in, and say what you think directly. Reason 5. The most senior person in the room hasn't heard you contribute before. The first time you speak in front of someone with authority, you're unknown to them. Unknown speakers carry no pre-existing credibility. When an unknown person offers an idea and a known person repeats it, even moments later, the known person's version carries more weight by default. Not because the room is dishonest, but because credibility precedes content in conditions of incomplete information. The room doesn't have enough data on you to evaluate the idea independently of who said it. So it evaluates both together, and the known voice wins. Fix. Build a visible presence in meetings before you introduce your most critical ideas. Contribute early on lower-stake points so that when your important idea surfaces, it lands in the context of an already established speaker. Reason 6. The person who took your idea framed it better than you did. Sometimes the idea doesn't get stolen. It gets upgraded in transmission. You offered the raw version, the core insight without the wrapper. Someone else heard it, processed it, added context, connected it to something the room cares about, and redelivered it in language that landed. From the outside, it looked like theft. But what actually happened is that they did translation work you didn't do before you walked in. Fix. Arrive with your idea already translated for the room. Not just the insight, the argument for why it matters, in terms of whatever priorities the decision-makers in the room are tracking. An unframed idea is a frame waiting to be borrowed by whoever frames it first. Reason 7. You don't reclaim the thread when someone repeats your idea. When someone takes your idea, even without crediting you, you have a window. That window is yours, and almost everyone wastes it. They go quiet, they feel the frustration, they disengage. But that moment is actually the clearest opportunity to reclaim attribution publicly and without confrontation. Yes, that's the direction I was pointing toward. Right, and building on what I raised earlier about that. Silence doesn't protect you. Re-entering the thread does. Fix. When your idea comes back through someone else's voice, get back in the conversation immediately. Extend it, build on it, reference your earlier framing explicitly. Position yourself as the origin of the thinking the room is now developing because you are. Reason 8. You're sitting in the wrong seat. Where you sit in a meeting affects how much authority your contributions carry. People seated at the sides of long tables contribute more words but receive less decision-making weight than people seated near the ends or near the primary decision-maker. Your idea can be strong and still land soft because of where in the physical room it came from. The same sentence with the same delivery carries different weight depending on which voice it's attributed to and where that voice is positioned. Fix. When you can choose, sit where you have direct sight lines to the most senior person present. Physical positioning creates presence. Presence creates attribution weight. It's a small adjustment with a disproportionate effect. Reason 9. You've trained the room to wait for someone else to validate your ideas. If you have a history of proposing ideas and then softening them when challenged, well, it's just one option. Or, I could be wrong about this. The room has learned that your ideas are provisional until someone else confirms them. So it waits. The first person to validate your idea gets positioned as the authority on it. Your idea, their decision. This pattern builds over time, and it's entirely invisible until you trace back how many times your proposals needed a second voice to land. Fix. Hold your position when challenged unless the challenge contains actual new information that changes your thinking. I hear the concern. I still think this is the right direction because provisional ideas attract appropriation. Committed positions attract credit. Reason 10. The meeting leaves no record of who said what. Meetings are verbal environments with almost no formal attribution. What gets documented is conclusions, not origins. The decision to pursue X gets written down. Who first proposed X does not. This means that even when attribution is perfectly clear in the room in the moment, the written record that outlasts the meeting carries no trace of it. A week later, everyone knows the idea. Nobody remembers exactly where it started. And the person most associated with it at that point is whoever spoke about it most recently or most visibly. Create your own record. Follow significant meetings with a brief written note, a message, an email, a follow-up that references your contribution by name. The person who builds the paper trail owns the attribution after the room disperses.